The soldier with the ruined face came on the first cold night of every month, and in a year of putting him back together, I never once asked his name. That was the arrangement, though we never spoke it. He came after dark, alone, a leather half-mask covering everything above his jaw, a hood over that. He paid in silver too clean for a common soldier and never haggled. He sat in the low chair by my hearth and let me work, and he did not flinch, not once, not even the first night when I drew a blade across the old wound on his shoulder to let it drain. I had 26 winters and a healing house at the ragged edge of the packlands, far enough out that the high-ranked never came to me. They had their own healers in the keep, with clean linen and silver instruments. I had a stone hearth, a shelf of dried things, a kettle, and a cracked green cup I poured willow bark tea into for everyone who passed through my door, because I had decided long ago that pain is more bearable when something warm is in your hands. He drank it every time. The cracked green cup, in the hands of a man who paid in clean silver. I should have wondered about that sooner. He did not talk. So I did. I want to be honest about what kind of person I am, because it explains everything that came after. I talked to fill silence the way other people pull a blanket up against cold. With him, the silence was so complete, so patient, that over the months I filled it with things I had never told a living soul. I told him about my mother, who died when I was 11, and left me her still room and her stubbornness. I told him I was tired of being an omega in a pack that decided what I was worth before I could speak. I told him my dream, the small, foolish one, that someday I would have a healing house, in a place where the rank of the person bleeding on my table did not change the care I gave them. I told him I was lonely in a way I had stopped admitting even to myself. He never answered. He only listened, with a stillness I came to rely on, and on the first cold night of the next month, he came back. I thought he was a low-ranking soldier with old wounds and nowhere else to go. I thought I was a stop on a hard road. I thought, when I let myself think it at all, that I had imagined the way his breathing changed when I spoke about being lonely. The 9th visit is the one I remember best, because it was the night I nearly understood and did not. It had been snowing. He came in with frost in the wool of his hood, and I saw the old shoulder wound had pulled open again where he favoured it. "You are not letting it rest," I told him, threading the needle by firelight. "You ride too hard, too soon, every month. A wound needs to be allowed to be a wound for a while, before it earns the right to be a scar." A pause. Then, quiet, from behind the mask, "I have not had much practice letting things be wounds." I should have heard it. I heard only a tired soldier being poetic, so I laughed and told him that was the truest thing anyone had said in my house all year, and that I would carve it over the door if signs were not a waste of good wood. He went very still at that. I thought I had caught him with the needle. When I finished, I held the cracked green cup out to him, and our hands met on the clay close enough that I felt the warmth come off his, and for one breath neither of us let go, both of us holding the same cup over my hearth like a pair of fools who had forgotten what hands were for. I let go first. I always let go first. I told myself it was only because the tea was his. "Why do you come all this way to me?" I asked him then, the nearest I ever came to the real question, when the keep has healers with silver tools and clean linen. He looked down into the cup a long moment. "Because they would know my name." I thought he meant a low man's pride, that he did not want the high healers gossiping over a soldier's scars. I told him pride was a poor reason to bleed, and he made a sound I understand now was a laugh, the only one I ever earned in that whole masked year, low and startled, as though it had got out before he could call it back. I have turned that hour over 100 times since. Because they would know my name. He handed me the truth whole and plain that night, and I poured him more tea and missed it entirely. I was wrong about all of it. I found out how wrong on the 12th visit, when the mask came off. It was the worst I had ever seen him. He came late, swaying in the doorway, and there was fresh blood under the old hood. A sword had opened his side along the ribs, deep, and he had ridden through it, instead of going to a proper healer, which told me something I did not yet have the pieces to understand. "Sit," I said, and for once he obeyed before I finished the word. I got his cloak off and his shirt open, and I worked fast, because a wound that colour does not wait politely. He was burning with fever by the time I had it closed, shaking, and the leather mask had soaked through with sweat at the edges. "It's chafing the wound on your jaw," I told him. "I have to take it off to clean under it. I have seen ruined faces before. Whatever is under there, I promise you I will not make a sound." His hand came up to stop me. Then, fever, exhaustion. A year of trust I had not known I was building, it fell. I unbuckled the mask. There was no ruin under it. There was a face I had seen once, 3 winters ago, from very far back in a crowd, on the day he rode through the packlands and every wolf for 100 miles bent the knee. There was a scar. Yes, old and silver, cutting through one brow. But mostly there was a face every soul in the territories would know on sight. Because it was stamped on the silver I had been so puzzled by, because it belonged to the strongest wolf alive. I was holding the leather mask of the Alpha King in one hand and a bloody cloth in the other, and I had, over the course of a year, told him I thought my pack had decided my worth before I could speak. I did not make a sound. I had promised I would not. I cleaned the cut along his jaw. I gave him something for the fever. I put the cracked green cup in his hands, because I did not know what else to do with mine, and he wrapped his fingers around it the way he always did, and over the rim his eyes, open now, no mask, nowhere to hide, watched me realize. "Don't," he said. "Horse, don't change how you," he stopped. The king of the Iron Territories, who had ridden through a sword wound rather than be seen, could not finish the sentence. "How long have you known I didn't know?" I said. "Since the first night. A year. A year of my mother and my loneliness and my small, foolish dream. Every word of it falling into the ear of the one man whose opinion of an Omega could end her or remake her, and he had let me go on believing I was speaking to no one. I should have been afraid. I had insulted the pack that was his to rule. I had wept in front of him. I had been, for 12 nights across a year, more completely myself than I had ever been in front of anyone. I was not afraid. I was furious, which is a thing that happens to me when I am too frightened to be frightened. "Get out," I said. He got out. He left the silver, and he left the cup, and he took the mask, and I heard his horse a long time in the dark, and I sat by my own hearth shaking the way he usually did. I did not expect to see him again. A king does not return to the woman who threw him out of her own healing house. That is not how the world is built. He returned in 8 days, which was not the first cold night of the month, and that was how I knew something in him had broken its own rules. He came without the mask this time. He stood in my doorway as the Alpha King, which was somehow worse, and he did not come in until I stepped back to let him. "I have no right to be here," he said. "None at all. I came to tell you the truth, since I owe you a year of it." He did not sit in the low chair. He stood, as if sitting were a comfort he had not earned. "I will not pretend it away, and I will not order you to forget it. You can throw me out again when I am done. And if you are still with me, settle in, because this is where I stopped understanding the story I thought I was in." He said he owed me a year of truth. So I stepped back and let the most powerful man alive into a stranger's hearth, and I listened the way he had once listened to me. He sat. Finally, I poured the tea. The cracked green cup, again, because some habits are stronger than mortification. "My brother died 3 winters ago," he said. The same week, I took the crown. He was the one meant to rule. Older, easier, loved. I was the spare. Then a border skirmish that should have been nothing took him, and the territories looked at me, and I have not been allowed to be anything but the king for 1 hour since. His hand turned the cup. The first cold night, a year ago, I rode out to the edge of the lands, because I could not be in that keep another moment, and I saw a light in a healing house, and a woman who did not know my face opened the door and called me a soldier, and told me to sit. I remembered that night. He had come in with a knife cut on his forearm that he had given himself, I understood now, on purpose, to have a reason to knock. "You poured me tea in a cracked cup," he said, "and you talked, and you did not want anything from me, because you did not know there was anything to want. For 1 hour I was no one. Do you understand what that is, to a man who is never no one?" I came back the next month for the hour. And then for you. Somewhere across the year it stopped being the hour and started being you, and I did not notice it happen, the way you do not notice the cold come on until you are already shaking. "You let me bare my whole self to a stranger," I said, and the stranger was the one person in the world who could do something with it. "Yes, you should have told me. Every month I meant to. And every month you would say something about your mother, about being decided for, about the healing house you dream of. And I would think, if I tell her, she will never say a true thing to me again. She will see the crown and not the man, like everyone else. So I let it cost you instead of me." He set the cup down, too carefully, and I knew that gesture. I had watched him not flinch 100 times. It was the most selfish thing I have ever done, and I would give a great deal to be allowed to keep doing it. I had spent a year telling that man everything. It turned out he had been keeping it. All of it. "Say something I told you," I said. "Prove you listened." He looked at me. "You were 11 when your mother died." Her still room faced east, so the morning light would reach the drying herbs. "You hate being called Little Healer because the man who runs the southern market does it to mean harmless. Your dream is not grand, and you are ashamed of how much you want it. A healing house where the rank of the person bleeding does not change the care. You take your own tea bitter. You laugh before you cry, always, every time, as a kind of warning. You did it the night you threw me out. The fire was very loud in the quiet. He had not forgotten a single word. Let me catch my breath here, the way I had to when it happened, and let me say, while there is a pause in it, that if a man who keeps every word a woman says is the kind of story you want more of, this channel is full of them. Subscribe and stay close. That is the only time I will ask. That was the night it would have turned tender, I think, if the world had let it. The world did not let it. The world sent Lord Asmund. The King's Chancellor was a careful man, and careful men notice patterns. He had noticed, across a year, that the most powerful wolf alive vanished from his own keep one night every month and returned at dawn with fresh wounds and no explanation, and a careful man does not call that love. He calls it a vulnerability. A leak. A hand on the king that does not belong to the crown. He traced it to me. Of course he did. And 6 days after the king sat at my hearth and recited my own life back to me, Asmund's men came to my healing house in daylight, when a woman cannot pretend she is not home, and they did not ask. They took me to the keep. They put me in a cold stone room, and Asmund himself came to ask the questions. And his questions were all the same question dressed in different clothes. What hold did I have on the king? What had I threatened him with? What was I being paid? Who did I serve? When I said I had thought he was a soldier, Asmund smiled the way a man smiles when you have confirmed his lowest opinion of you. A common healer who happened to ensnare the king for a year and happened not to know his face, he said. You will understand if the Crown finds that difficult to believe. Manipulation of the Alpha is treason. I would think very carefully, little healer, about how cooperative you intend to be. Little healer. He could not have known, but I laughed, the warning laugh, the one before the tears, and I did not cooperate. And they left me in the cold room overnight with the iron of a shackle marking my wrist. And I understood that a year of being completely known by one man had made me, to every other man in this keep, completely suspect. The king did not come. I told myself I had not expected him to. I told myself many things in that cold room. He had not come because he had not been told. Asmund had moved while the king was 3 days' ride away settling a border dispute, and had timed it with a chancellor's precision. Because Asmund's true plan was not to question a healer. It was to remove her, and to fill the space she left before the king could object. By the time Soren returned, the keep was already arranged for a betrothal. Asmund had put it about that the king's long instability was the work of a scheming Omega now safely in custody, and that the cure was an immediate, sensible, public match to Lady Vesna, a noble of impeccable rank who had been waiting in the wings for exactly this. The announcement was set for the evening of the king's return, in the great hall before the full court. Sign it, witness it, and the Omega in the cold room becomes a closed matter, a footnote, then nothing. I learned all this from Gunnar, the king's second, who came to the cold room himself at dusk, unlocked it with his own key against every order he had been given, and crouched to my level with an expression I did not expect on the face of a warrior. He has been looking for you since the moment he rode through the gate, Gunnar said. Asmund told him you confessed and fled. He did not believe it. He turned the Chancellor's own apartments over with his hands. A breath. The announcement is within the hour. I am not supposed to be here, but I have watched my king come home wounded one night a month for a year and lie to me about why, and I find I would rather break an order than watch him sign his life to the wrong woman, because a clever man timed it well. Can you stand? I could stand. Then stand where he can see you, Gunnar said, and let him do the rest. He has been trying to give you the truth for a year. Give him one room to do it in. The great hall was full to its grey walls, and at the front of it stood the Alpha King in black, and beside him Lady Vesna in pale silk, and between them the Chancellor, with the betrothal writ already unrolled, ink and witnesses ready, the whole machine of it turning smoothly toward a thing that could not be undone once spoken. I came in at the back, on Gunnar's arm, with a shackle mark on my wrist and a year of secrets behind my teeth, and I did not make myself small. I had spent a year being told what an Omega was worth. I was finished agreeing. Asmund saw me first. Remove her, he said to his men, smooth as oil. The prisoner has no place. Stop. The king's voice did what it had never once done at my hearth. It filled the room. Every head turned to find what had stopped him, and found me, and the hall made the sound a hall makes when it does not yet know what it is watching. That woman, Soren said, is not a prisoner of the crown. She was taken from her home in my absence, on this man's order, on a charge this man invented. He turned to the assembled lords, and I watched the proudest creature alive choose to be seen. You have been told I was made unstable this past year by a scheming Omega. I will tell you the truth instead, and you may think of me what you like when I am done. For one night a month, for a year, I rode to a healing house at the edge of these lands, and let a woman who did not know my face treat wounds. I gave myself reasons to bring her. She thought I was a soldier. I let her think it. I went because in that room I was permitted to grieve my brother as a man, and not perform strength as a king. She knew nothing of who I was. She wanted nothing of what I am. His voice did not break, but it came close, and closeness in that man was an earthquake. There was no manipulation. There was a drowning man and the only person who never once asked him to be the crown. If that is weakness, then I have been weak in the one place I was allowed to be, and I will not be ashamed of it before any of you. The hall was silent. Lady Vesna, to her great credit, had taken 3 steps away from the Chancellor. Asmund did not yield. Careful men rarely do until the ground is already gone. A moving story, he said, and exactly what a skilled manipulator would arrange for you to believe. Your Majesty, she has had a year to learn your every. Ask me anything, she told him. My own voice, carrying across the hall the way it had carried that first night I laughed at the wrong moment. The court turned. You say I learned him. You have it backward, my lord. He learned me. Ask him my mother's name. Ask him which way her stillroom faced. Ask him what the Southern market man calls me to mean I am harmless. A blackmailer studies her victim. She does not hand him her whole childhood and her smallest dream and call it a year of conversation with a man she believed was no one. I held up my marked wrist so the room could see it. I came here in irons for the crime of being known. I will not apologize for it, and I will not stand here while you turn the kindest hour of his life into a crime to cover the fact that you wanted his throne arranged your way. It was very quiet. Then, into the quiet, came the wolf. I had never seen it. In a year I had only ever met the man. But it came through the side of the hall now, enormous, grey shot through, with black. And it did not go to the king, and it did not so much as glance at the noblewoman in silk. It crossed the length of that great hall, past every lord who outranked me, and it came to the Omega healer with the shackle mark, and it pushed its great head beneath my marked hand, and stood, the whole warm weight of it against my side. And it turned and looked at the court of the Iron Territories, the way you look at people who have been very slow to understand something obvious. The king came down off the dais. He did not kneel. A king does not kneel. But he crossed to me on his own feet and took my wrist, the marked one, and turned it over in his hands the way he had turned the cup 100 times. I should have told you on the first night, he said, low, just for me, though the whole hall strained to hear. I told myself I was protecting your honesty. I was protecting myself from losing the one place I was real. I let it cost you everything, and I have a year of your words I have no right to, and I would not give a single one of them back. His thumb moved over the mark the iron had left. Grieve your brother. You told a stranger once, before you let yourself be happy, or you will spend your whole life thinking you do not deserve it. You did not know who you were saying it to. I have thought of nothing else for 11 months. There is a particular cost to that man's grief. I had felt the edge of it for a year without a name for it, and I felt it surge now, harder than I had ever seen. The whole held weight of 3 winters trying to close back over him in front of everyone. He shook with it. And I did the only thing I had ever known how to do for him. I put my hand over the place on his side where the worst wound had been, the one he had ridden through to reach me, and I held him steady while it passed. The way I had held the cup out 100 times, and I did not make a sound, because I had promised him once that I would not. When he kissed me, it was not a thing I could have described to you in parts. It was the year coming undone all at once, the hour and the mask, and the cracked cup, and every word he had kept, and what broke open in me was not desire, but the plain astonishment of being. For the first time in my life, entirely known and wanted anyway. The court could think what it liked. As it happened, the court mostly cheered, which I am told is rare, and which I did not hear over the roaring in my own ears. Lord Asmund did not get his quiet estate. He had laid hands on the king's chosen, fabricated a charge, and timed a betrothal to bury a woman in irons. And the lords who had been ready to call the king weak an hour before found they had no stomach to defend a chancellor who had shackled the woman their king wept for in open court. He was stripped of his seat and his lands and sent beyond the territory's border with an escort that did not speak to him. Lady Vesna married a northern lord within the year and sent us, to my surprise, a genuinely warm letter and a very good wheel of cheese. The fracture was real, and I will not pretend otherwise. For a season there were those who whispered that a king who rode out in a mask to be coddled by an omega was a king who could be tested, and one or two tested him, and learned the difference between a man who hides his grief and a man who has none. The keep took a long while to decide what to do with me. So did I. But here is where the warmth lives, so let me leave you there. A year on, a full year, the cold first night of the month come round again. I have my healing house. Not the one at the ragged edge. That one I gave to a younger healer who needed a start. Mine is in the keep now, a sunlit room off the great hall, east-facing so the morning light reaches the drying herbs, and the rank of the person bleeding on my table does not change the care they get, because the king put that in law with his own hand and dared anyone to question it. They do not question it. Gunnar still steals my willow bark tea and blames the wolf, who accepts the blame because it is usually near the honey when he does. The cracked green cup sits on a shelf in the keep among cups of gold and horn and fine glazed clay. It is the ugliest thing in the room. It is the only one he ever reaches for. He comes to my hearth still, the first cold night of every month. He does not have to. He could send for me. He could simply be wherever I am, since we are rarely anywhere else. But he comes the way he came the first time, on his own feet, after dark, and he sits in the low chair, and he lets me pour. The only difference is that now, when the cup is empty, he takes the kettle from my hands and fills it again himself, and pours for me, and we sit in the quiet I no longer feel any need to fill. He still does not talk much. He never did, but he listens to every word, and I have finally stopped being surprised by it, because I know now what I did not know for a year, that I was never speaking to no one. I was speaking to the one person who would keep all of it. So tell me, did you see it coming? That he was hiding to grieve and not to court? That the listening was the love before either of us knew? Or did the mask come off for you the same moment it came off for me? Tell me in the comments, and tell me where you are listening from tonight, because I like to think of you all out there in the dark, with something warm in your hands. If this one stayed with you, stay with me, subscribe, and I will pour you another. There is always another. The first cold night comes round for everyone eventually. Until then, take your tea however you like it, and never believe you are speaking to no one.